Hey, welcome back to another video. I'm Ivan Calderon, and today we're making a beat. So as we all know, Nexus 3 recently dropped, and if you haven't seen my review yet, I'm gonna link it up top here. But today I thought, why instead not make a beat using nothing but the new sounds, the new 360 new sounds that come with Nexus 3. So then that is exactly what we're doing today, so without further ado, let's jump right in. Okay, so let's break this beat down. Now, this beat is a great example of how sometimes the sounds can dictate the direction of a beat, because if I'm being completely honest, I got the idea to make a beat like this, like very whimsical, ethereal, when I was doing the Nexus 3 review, because as I was going through the sounds, I came across this piano that I loved. It's called the Bimhuis, this here. It sounded very magical, very dreamy, and I knew that I wanted to come back. I made a mental note to come back and make a beat. So that is what we started with. Now for this beat, I'm at 58 BPM, and I'm actually playing in the F Lydian mode, which is essentially C major, but instead of starting on the C, you start on the F, and I played these chords here. Kind of staggering the first notes of these chords just to make it more interesting. So again, this piano was just beautiful to me, so I had to start with that. Next, I moved on to the drums just because I wanted to set some sort of rhythmic foundation to give me direction of where to go. And the easiest thing to do there is to start off with the snares. Now the snares are placed on every 2 and 4, but what I did is I recorded a clap at the same time and placed that on the 4 just to kind of accentuate that hit. So together we get this. and that just repeats. So once we had those two elements in place, then we moved on to the close hats. Now I had two, and if you watch my videos a lot, then you know that I do this all the time. But we had a trap hat with rolls, and then we had a live hat, which kind of gave it this chug motion. So the trap hat sounds like this. And then the other hat sounds like this. And the cool thing about having these two together is that the chug hat, the live hat, kind of gives it that metronome feel just to kind of keep you going, but the trap hat gives it articulation. It gives it a little bit of like these interesting bits just to kind of keep the song moving. So together you get this. Now from there I knew that I wanted some sort of like tom as a perk, and what I did is I went through my sample library, I found this tom that I wanted, and I loaded it into sample 1. I tuned it and played it in key, and that tom sounds like this. Very, very sporadic. It doesn't happen often. And very low in volume too, but it kind of gives it that extra little sauce in there. And then of course we had the open hat. And that just repeats again. Okay, so at this point I moved back over to the melodic section, and at this point I'm hearing this like really fat synthy bass, like dun dun. So I found it, and that is in the, again, ROM Extensions 2 folder, which is a new sounds, bass, and it's called Front. So once we add that in, we get this. And again, that just repeats. Now to me, this bass was great, but it was more rhythmic than anything. I still was looking for something that had more sustain just to kind of fill in that bottom end. So what I did was I kept looking, and in the bass section, I found this other one called the bass pad, and that sounds like this. Very typical Drake underwater bass. But it fills in that bottom end quite nicely, and I'm actually playing the same notes from that first bass. So together. Next up, we have some strings. Now the strings I got from, obviously, the string section, and it's called the pizzicato. I don't know, I'm probably butchering that, but it's that one there. And then we kind of sprinkled them all over this piece here just to kind of give it some more life. But that sounds like this. And it has a slight change at the end here with these notes. A little variation. Okay, so at this point I went back to the drums, and I wanted something to accentuate that snare that's hitting by itself. So I went back to Nexus and I looked for effects. So under the effects sound folder, there's one called demo effects, and it's that one there. And what I did was I played a note in key, bounced it in place, and then just kind of manipulated the audio. So I time stretched it to be on time, added in a fade in, a couple more things, and now that sounds like this. So what happens is that on the snare that's alone, you get a little bit of a buildup. And then we have the one combined with the clap. So again, just little bits, little tidbits that you can add to make your drums a little bit more interesting. From there, we finish the drums by adding the kick and the crash, and that sounds like this. Very sporadic kicks, nothing crazy. Finally, the last piece to this beat was some sort of lead. In my head, after hearing this, there was still this gap. I wanted some sort of like synth lead to be present, but very low, kind of in the background. So I went back to Nexus and I looked under their leads folder, and I found this one called the Catalyst, and it's this one here. Now, by default, it didn't sound the way that I have it now. I had to mess with it a little bit. So I went to the effects folder, or the effects tab rather, and I forget what I did, but essentially I think I added this stereo enhancer. I added this chorus. I switched the delay, I believe it was in ping pong before. I switched it to mono, messed around with the mix. I added a filter, cut off some of the highs, and I believe in my actual mixer window, I added this whiter plugin, which I talked about in this video here, and then we added a little bit of reverb from Soundtoys, a little plate, and then it turned into this. And the whole beat, the final beat, once again, sounds like this. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you're not already, but I will see you on the next one.